didn't even ask her.
On the other side,
Another 20 seconds and then we can get out of here.
Or start.
Right, good.
Hamas che ha attaccato Israele. Ora vediamo anche altri problemi. Ci sono poi altri problemi internazionali. Vediamo la guerra in questo momento che ha colpito Israele. Perché l'intelligence non se ne accorge? Inoltre, il Parlamento americano in questo momento è in crisi, manca lo speaker repubblicano, Kevin McCarthy, è stato mandato a casa la scorsa settimana. Che cosa vuol dire? È che il governo americano è bloccato, non può mandare alcun denaro in Israele, tantomeno aiutare l'Ucraina, fino a quando non torna, fino a quando non viene eletto la situazione poi a livello internazionale, come vediamo da più giorni, non è dei migliori. Vediamo la guerra internazionale, dove c'è la guerra, non perché si è arrivata la guerra in Ucraina, Putin è stato un dittatore, è andato in paese libero, ma ci sono le forze dall'altra parte, si parla di corruzione, i media americani parlano di corruzione del governo anche ucraino, della mancanza di libertà dell'informazione sempre in Ucraina. Inoltre viene riportato, ma queste sono le notizie che sentiamo anche riportate dai media europei, che Biden ha ricevuto 80.000 euro all'anno per diversi mesi per sedere nel consiglio di amministrazione della Burisma, la società elettrica ucraina. Poi ci chiede perché gli americani, il governo americano sono riusciti così tanti interessi in Ucraina. Questo ha portato una forte destabilizzazione dell'Europa. Come vediamo, le famiglie italiane come quelle europee hanno fatica ad arrivare a fine mese, i prezzi sono alle stelle. Poi vediamo la situazione in questo momento. Ora, come Dio niente, l'Israele sta stabilizzando, gli Stati Uniti hanno cercato di con l'Arabia Saudita e la pace con Israele. In questo momento c'è una forte destabilizzazione e la guerra in Israele. Purtroppo una situazione che sembra non destinata a migliorare, almeno si dice fino a quando non ci saranno le prossime elezioni e forse cambieranno il presidente. A quel punto, forse a livello anche internazionale, gli Stati Uniti torneranno leader e prenderanno un'altra strada.
No, just next to you.
Oh,
Thanks. Yeah.
this one, you can see it. Yeah. Hello.
So we only got one.
Okay, so you did the second one? Okay, very good. I'll just hit the one side. Between. When I used a picture, let's do this. Because I don't have time or inclination, 19 minutes from now to like create a whole script. I can't touch on that. So they can just keep in the little box and the big box, little box, and they're writing the picture while I'm talking and setting up the sound. Yeah, for big box, little box. Thank you.
1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2.
Attention, the press briefing will begin in 2 minutes. The press briefing will begin in 2 minutes.
This is gonna be a quick one.
Yeah, we're gonna get hauled out, aren't we?
I think it'll have to pull. Yeah, so I think. Okay. Are you saying?
No, we got 1 minute.
Yeah.
Or I am saying.
Paying for what? All this. That one for the.
Okay, so that's gonna start.
Save me for the next go.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you all know, this morning, President Biden and Vice President Harris spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu. This was the president's third conversation with him since this crisis began. President Biden and Vice President Harris continue to meet with the national security team to receive updates and give direction on next steps. The president held 17 calls and meetings over Saturday, Sunday, and Monday with his national security team. The President and the Vice President have held more than 36 meetings, briefings, and calls since the attacks on Israel began. The President will continue to be relentless in ensuring that Israel and the Israeli people have what they need in support from the United States to defend themselves in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead. As you all know, you just heard directly from the President, and I have the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, here to take any of your questions on this issue.
Thanks, everybody. I'll make a few comments, and then I'll be happy to take your questions. Like many of you, we've watched in horror and anguish the scenes of butchery against innocent civilians at the hands of Hamas terrorists in Israel. And the more we learn, the greater our grief. More than 1,000 men, women, and children were slaughtered in their homes, on their streets, in desert fields, and among them at least 14 Americans. We mourn for all their lives, and we're actively working with Israelis to determine the whereabouts of the missing, including missing American citizens. As the President just said, what we've seen from Hamas these past few days was the same evil and barbarity that we've seen from ISIS. The unspeakable horrors they perpetrated on innocent people, women, children, the elderly, babies. These were the scenes we saw in Iraq and Syria as ISIS rampaged through. As President Biden said, this is not some distant tragedy. The bonds between Israel and America run long and they run deep. And we stand with Israel, not just in these dark days, but at all times. As Corinne just said, the President has been deeply engaged in giving direction to his national security team to take action to support Israel in its hour of need. At his direction, the United States has surged ammunition and interceptors for Iron Dome, and the President spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu just a little while ago to talk about additional capabilities that Israel will need, and he pledged that American planes will be landing in Israel with those capabilities in the days ahead. And now, at the direction of the President, we are working with Congress to make sure that Israel maintains supply of these critical assets to defend its cities and its citizens, as well as the many U.S. citizens who live, work, and travel in Israel. Also at President Biden's direction, the U.S. military has enhanced its force posture in the region to strengthen our deterrence, including the movement of a carrier strike group into the Eastern Mediterranean, and we are prepared to move additional assets as necessary. Let me be clear, we did not move the carrier for Hamas. We moved the carrier to send a clear message of deterrence to other states or non-state actors that might seek to widen this war. The President has also tasked us with engaging in contingency planning for any and all escalation scenarios, and we are now deeply engaged in that planning, and we are consulting with allies and partners as well about all of the potential scenarios that might unfold in the days ahead. Let me repeat what we've now said many times and what the President said just a short while ago, so that everyone, including enemies who are thinking of exploiting the current situation, hear it loud and clear. The United States has always and will always have Israel's back. And to those families undergoing the unfathomable pain of having loved ones missing, our hearts go out to you. We cannot imagine the anguish you must be feeling right now. We know that U.S. citizens are among the missing, and we know that U.S. citizens, as the President just said, are among the hostages. We are working with the Israeli government and with our regional partners on every aspect of the hostage crisis, including sharing intelligence and deploying experts from across the U.S. government to advise the Israeli government and coordinate with them on hostage recovery efforts. As the President just said, there is no higher priority than the safety and well-being of American citizens being held hostage overseas. Over the coming days, we'll continue to stand strongly with Israel to ensure that it is able to defend itself. And my team and I are working with our colleagues across the U.S. government every hour to keep the President updated on the latest developments, to take his direction and put it into action, and we'll continue following his direction to provide Israel and the people of Israel all the support required at this time of need. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions. Yeah.
Jake, thank you.
We'll do you first and then.
Thank you, Jake.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the American hostages, can you first of all tell us how many are we talking about, several or a dozen hostages, and do you know anything about their condition at all?
We do not know about their condition, and we cannot confirm a precise number of American citizens. We believe that there are 20 or more Americans who at this point are missing, But I want to underscore and stress that does not mean necessarily that there are 20 or more American hostages. Just that is the number who are currently unaccounted for. We will work hour by hour both to determine whether we can account for any of those Americans or to confirm exactly what the number of Americans are being held hostage, and we will come back to you with that information as soon as we have it. As you know, very sadly and tragically, the number of dead has risen with each passing hour, and that's true of the total number. It's also true of Americans, which has gone up just today from an earlier report this morning of 12, then 13, now 14. So I cannot give you a precise number. I can tell you that number of unaccounted for at this time. That number could change too, but I want to underscore that that is not a statement from me that we have that many hostages. We do not know the number of hostages we have at this time.
And did the president discuss with the prime minister the possibility of a ground incursion into Gaza, and also how that might affect the American hostages that are in Gaza that are now confirmed?
I'm not going to get into the operational discussions that the president and the prime minister had. That is important for them to be able to keep in a discrete channel between them. What I will tell you is that the president and prime minister did discuss how the United States can deploy expertise to help work on the hostage recovery efforts. That is what the United States is in the process of doing right now. Steve.
Under what circumstances would you put American forces on the ground to help out?
At this point, that is not something that is under planning. What we are focused on when we talk about sending experts, it is people who can work on intelligence, who can work on overall planning, who can work on coordination with the Israeli government. We are not currently sending forces to Israel, and I'll leave it at that for now. Yeah.
Has the president spoken to any of the families of the 14 American citizens who were killed?
He has not yet spoken with the families, but the State Department has been in contact with those families, and the president has been making this his highest priority as he receives briefings each day about what we are doing to try to determine both what's happening with the missing and also to ensure that we can secure the bodies of those who have perished and ensure that they get returned to their loved ones.
Are you also reaching out to those whose loved ones may be unaccounted for? One family member of a missing American said that there's been no formal attempt by the U.S. government to update the families.
We have, in fact, updated the families of the unaccounted for Americans that we know of. If there are Americans for some reason who have not yet been reached out to, that will be remedied immediately because Secretary Blinken, President Biden, everybody in the U.S. government is making this the highest priority. So we are in very regular contact with every family who has someone either missing or unaccounted for, and anyone who's not currently on that list for whatever reason, we will take care of that. That is going to be our highest priority. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake. Two quick questions, one for clarity. The Iron Dome replenishment, has it already arrived or is it on its way?
Some of the interceptors have come out of stocks that the U.S. had in country. So those have gone over to the Israelis in short order, and then we will be flowing in additional Iron Dome interceptors so that they have the capabilities they need to sustain their Iron Dome defense systems. We are also looking at other ways that we can help augment their air defense capabilities as well as we look ahead, not just to what's happening now, but to potential contingencies that could unfold.
And then secondly, what can you say about Iran's role in the Hamas attack? And is that one of the actors you were worried about widening the war?
Look, we've said since the beginning that Iran is complicit in this attack in a broad sense because they have provided the lion's share of the funding for the military wing of Hamas. They have provided training, they have provided capabilities, they have provided support, and they have had engagement and contact with Hamas over years and years. And all of that has played a role in contributing to what we have seen. Now, as to the question of whether Iran knew about this attack in advance or helped plan or direct this attack, we do not, as of the moment I'm standing here at the podium, have confirmation of that. We are talking to our Israeli counterparts on a daily basis about this question. We're looking back through our intelligence holdings to see if we have any further information on that. We're looking to acquire further intelligence. And if there's an update to that, I'll share it with you. But as I stand here today, while Iran plays this broad role, sustained, deep, and dark role in providing all of this support and capabilities to Hamas, in terms of this particular gruesome attack on October 7th. We don't currently have that information. We will continue to look for it, and if we find it, we will share that with you. Yeah.
Thank you, Jake. Looking back at the last few days, how did Israel miss this attack coming?
That's a question for you to ask the Israeli government. Obviously, the Israeli government has placed a high premium on its intelligence capacity as it relates to Hamas, as it relates to the West Bank, as it relates to Hezbollah. And why it is that they did not have warning from this is not a question that I can answer from this podium.
What about U.S. intelligence? Was there anything in what crosses your desk that would suggest that this was coming?
We did not see anything that suggested an attack of this type was going to unfold any more than the Israelis did.
And in your meeting in the Situation Room today, we saw an image earlier. At some point, undoubtedly in the last few days, the president has seen the images of the dead Israelis. What has been his reaction when shown those images?
I mean, you've seen him now twice. You've heard his voice. And this has been a deeply emotional time for all of us, as I'm sure it is for many people in this room who know people or know people who know people who were killed or who are missing. And all of us have developed close relationships with our Israeli counterparts. President Biden has a decades-long relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he can hear the pain in Prime Minister Netanyahu's voice when he talks to him. I hear the pain of my counterparts when I talk to them. So this is not just about policy or strategy. This is personal for us, and it's personal for the American people with their bonds with the Israeli people. And so President Biden has seen and felt the deep emotional resonance of this, but he has also held the conviction that his job as president is to make sure that he has the clarity of mind and purpose to take the actions necessary so that we are standing with Israel in its hour of need, so that we are working to deter a widening of this conflict, and so we are getting Israel the tools that it requires to defend itself. Yeah.
Thank you, Jake. You just laid out all of the ways that Iran is complicit in this and facilitated it over years of support for Hamas. Is that reason enough to refreeze the $6 billion that the U.S. helped unlock for them to get in exchange for the prisoners?
We have not yet had a dollar of that $6 billion spent, and I will leave it at that.
But will you refreeze it based on this activity that you just laid out, all of the ways that they are complicit in this? The administration said that if we see them going in the wrong direction, that we would stop that down. I understand the position that you guys have, that not a dollar of this has been spent. But will you prevent it from getting into their hands to allow them to, do what they do that you just laid out?
Let me just reiterate what I said, because it's unequivocal. Not a dollar of that money has been spent, and I will leave it at that.
Is it being considered?
Yes.
Jacob, if I can ask you, will the U.S. support Israel's military attacks in Gaza for as long as it takes, until the hostages are freed, or until Hamas is destroyed? I guess in simple terms, how much retaliation in Gaza is the U.S. willing to accept?
I don't think of this in terms of retaliation. This is about providing support to Israel as it seeks to defend its territory and deal with an ongoing imminent threat from Hamas terrorists who, as I said before, are acting a heck of a lot like ISIS terrorists in their barbarity and cruelty. That requires going after Hamas terrorist targets in Gaza, because even as we speak, even as I stand here, there could be rockets flying out of Gaza. Going after those sites, that's not retaliation. That's Israel stepping up to defend itself and ensure the safety and security of the Israeli people. And we're going to support them for as long as they need to ensure that Israel is safe and secure. And I can't put a timetable on that.
So to be clear, is the goal the destruction of Hamas, the guarantee that Hamas cannot launch attacks from there, the confirmation that all Americans and Israelis have been secured safely from there? Where do you draw the line? Is there a red line, and where do you draw that line of what you need to accomplish, what they may accomplish?
I'm not standing up here to draw red lines. What I'm standing up here to say is that in its hour of need, as Israel embarks on an operation to try to protect its country, protect the Jewish state of Israel, and to go after the threats that it faces, and also working closely with them hand in hand to try to secure the release and recovery of American and other hostages, we will do all of that. And I'm not here to to draw red lines or issue warnings or give lectures to anybody. I'm here to say that the president has given us direction to take a series of actions. We are undertaking those actions, and we will continue to do so in the weeks ahead.
Last one, very quickly, that we heard from the families of Americans who are unaccounted for right now. They spoke publicly in Israel today. You said the president hasn't spoken to them directly. What is the president's message to those families right now who said it is the responsibility of the president of the United States to make sure their loved ones come home safely?
The president said in his remarks today that as president of the United States, he has no higher priority than the safety and well-being of Americans held hostage overseas. And he has proven in country after country his willingness to go further than any other president has gone before to secure the release and bring those people home. He is going to try to do that in this case as well, but that is a high priority for him, and that is the message that he is sending, along with a deep sense of understanding of the grief and hurt and pain and anguish they are feeling right now as they wait to hear news of their loved ones. Yeah.
Jake, the president has remarks today referred to seeking for assistance for partners, plural. Does that suggest that you've decided strategically to ask Congress for a package that includes both Ukraine aid as well as aid for Israel? And, you know, Chairman McCall suggested even including border and Taiwan money and that. I'm just kind of hoping you could give a state of play of how you guys are thinking about this in your interactions with the Hill.
So I'm not going to get ahead of the president's request and not going to take the place of the OMB director who will present the request that we send up. But the president was very clear today that we will be making a request to the Congress, and it will include a request for funding for support to Israel. And he has also been equally clear that we are going to renew our request to the Congress for aid to Ukraine. What exact form that all takes, that will be worked out and presented by others, not by me. But the notion that we're going to go up and ask for Israel aid and ask for Ukraine aid, that's unequivocal. We are going to do that.
Beyond Iron Dome and ammunition, were there any other requests made by Prime Minister Netanyahu today that we can expect to be part of that package?
As I mentioned in my opening comments, he did make specific requests with respect to other capabilities. I'm not going to get into the details of that from this podium, but he and the president discussed that. I spoke with Lloyd Austin, who was on his way to the NATO Defense Ministerial, about those requests. Secretary Austin is following up on that. And as I said in my opening comments, you can expect to see American planes flying into Israel to deliver military capabilities to support Israel. Yeah.
Just a follow-up on Iron Dome. How effective has it been in deterring the attacks? And I know you mentioned this a bit in terms of the interceptors, but has Israel asked for interceptors on an ongoing basis in light of the situation?
You ask how effective it has been in deterring. I can't say that it is deterred, obviously, because a huge number of rockets have fired, but it has been effective, as it typically is, in taking a lot of those rockets out of the sky and saving countless lives by doing so. Now, of course, some rockets have gotten through to tragic cost, and that has been the pattern we have seen in previous conflicts as well. Now, Israel will have an ongoing need for interceptors, because an air defense system is only as good as your ability to continue to put interceptors in that can take out the rockets that are coming to kill civilians and rain down terror on cities. And we are committed to making sure that we are working with Israel to produce and supply the requisite number of Iron Dome interceptors so that they can keep those systems going on an indefinite basis going forward, because we cannot say how long this will be going on. Yeah.
Thank you. Jake, while you're supporting Israel militarily and rightly denounce this horrific and heinous act against Israeli civilians, how can you make sure that Israel goes after Hamas and its infrastructure in Gaza, not 2 million Palestinians who are trapped with no water, with no electricity, with no medical supply? The UN schools are overflown now. The number of dead is reaching 850 so far, including 6 members of one family of the former ambassador to Washington. How can you make sure that this is not revenge, but actually going after Hamas, who committed this horrible crime?
Well, as the president said today, the difference between countries like the United States and Israel is that we do not deliberately target civilians. We are strongest when we are committed to the rule of law, and we work to make sure that all military operations are conducted consistent with the rule of law and the law of war. That is something that President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu have discussed, not just in this context, but in previous contexts as well. That is something the United States has always stood for and always will continue to stand for. Yeah.
Can you confirm that the Egyptian intelligence has passed information to the Israelis that the attack is imminent or some attack is going to happen?
I cannot confirm that. Yeah.
Prime Minister Netanyahu had tweeted on Saturday telling residents of Gaza to leave now because we will operate forcefully everywhere. Where is the idea of where people in Gaza will go?
This is something also that we have been discussing with our counterparts in Israel and with our counterparts in Egypt. And without getting into the specifics of safe passage for civilians and so forth, I will say it's something that the U.S. government is seized with in supporting how we do that operationally. But the details of that are something that are being discussed among the operational agencies, and I don't want to share too much of that publicly at this time.
Imminently, or what is it?
I'll leave it at the fact that we are focused on this question. There are consultations ongoing, and I'll share more when I have an update for you. Yeah.
Following up on that question about what the president said about talking to the Israeli prime minister about democracies and the laws of war, was that a warning to the prime minister, and why did the president feel that was necessary to bring that up in the call today?
It was not a warning. The call today was not President Biden warning Prime Minister Netanyahu about anything. It was two leaders talking to one another, one who is leading a nation that has suffered an unfathomable attack, and another nation who is standing behind them foursquare in the defense of their country. And the conversation carried on in those terms, and the two leaders spoke in a collaborative fashion, as they always do. No, I cannot accept the characterization of your question. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake. I have two questions. First, some reports are saying that IRGC commander was in Lebanon. Ismail Khani was in Lebanon a few days ago and he left to Syria. Also, you are saying that Iran is complicit in this attack. Are you trying to downplay the Iranian role here? What are you waiting for to take an action? And my second question, what assessment do you have on where other militias, other Iranian militias stand now, whether in Iraq? We also heard the Houthis threat now. Can you give us an update? And is there a risk on the U.S. troops in the region? Thank you.
So on your first question, I laid out our view, which is the broad complicity based on the long-standing support that Hamas is giving to Iran. We don't have specific information that ties Iran to this attack. At this time, we don't have that information. We may gain that information in the hours and days ahead, but we don't presently have it. So that's in answer to your first question with respect to the intelligence. With respect to the question of the various militia groups across the region, we do believe that they pose an urgent threat, and that it is certainly distinctly possible that they choose to try to exploit or take advantage of this situation, and we have been sending clear warnings that doing so will result in a firm response and consequences from the United States. And that goes across the board, and we have been clear also in sending a message of deterrence through the movement of the Carrier Strike Group into the Eastern Mediterranean, as well as through the assurance that we will sustain F-16s, F-35s, A-10s in theater to be able to deal with any contingency that the United States might have to deal with in the days ahead. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake. The European Union says it opposes a total siege of Gaza. What's the US position on that?
I have seen those reports, but my understanding is that is not the concept of siege is not something that, in fact, is going to be pursued by the Israeli government. But we are consulting with the Israeli government about their actions in this regard. And like I said before to a previous question, President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu had the opportunity to talk through the difference between going full bore against Hamas terrorists and how we distinguish between terrorists and innocent civilians. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jake. Just zooming out to China, is the U.S. worried that this attention now to Israel is going to detract resources from the Indo-Pacific? Have you communicated with Beijing about this attack in Israel? And just going to Senator Schumer's comments, he said he was disappointed by President Xi's soft response? Has that been part of the discussions here?
We were not entirely surprised by the PRC's response based on their history of commentary on these kinds of issues. We believe that the United States is capable of supporting Ukraine in Europe, of supporting our allies in the Indo-Pacific, and of supporting our close ally Israel in its hour of need. And we believe we have the resources, tools, and capacities to be able to effectively do that. And part of our job is to ensure that we are working across all of these theaters at once, and that's precisely what we're doing each day. Yeah.
There have been some Republican lawmakers who have argued the U.S. can't support two wars. Could you address some of that and talk a little bit about how you'll make these requests to Congress and make the case that the U.S. needs to invest, maybe not with troops on the ground, but with military and economic aid in both Israel and Ukraine?
Standing for Ukraine so that Russian aggression does not prevail in Europe, the amount of resources that we need to put into that compared to the amount of resources we would have to put in if Russia were in fact to conquer Ukraine and then potentially have its aggression continue across Europe, it is so much more cost effective to take the action now as opposed to pay the huge price later, a price that might ultimately, as it has in the past, require the actual deployment of American troops to combat. So better to support the Ukrainians as they stand firm against Russian aggression and do so on a sustained basis. And we have the budget wherewithal to be able to do that. We also have the budget wherewithal to be able to provide Israel what it needs. And we firmly reject the notion that the United States of America cannot at once support the freedom and loving people of Ukraine and support the state of Israel. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Jake. Is the administration working with Israel and Egypt to open the Rafah crossing to try to ensure evacuations are possible? And then also, I know that you said that in conversations with Israeli leaders, you don't think that a complete siege is something that they may be attempting to do in Gaza, but is there any counsel of restraint from the administration to Israel?
So on the first question, in reference to a previous question, I spoke about our consultations with the Israelis and the Egyptians about how to deal with the challenge of civilians who want to leave Gaza. I'm not going to get into the details of that, about a specific crossing or so forth, only to say that that is something we are focused on and we are working on. And I want to leave those conversations in diplomatic channels, at least for the moment, when we have more to offer